everyone. I got some. Oh my god, I'm so excited, but I don't want to say it. Okay. First things first. Before I go nuts and crazy, first things first. Today we're gonna be reading Broken Pieces. Jason the Toymaker, ex-listener up in here. Second, as you guys know, I've been doing driver's ed for a bit, or if you haven't known, I apologize. I haven't really been updating a bit on it because I was like kind of focusing on it. And if you don't know what driver's ed, basically driving. So I finally finished it today, and I passed. I'm so happy I passed. I passed driving. I can drive now, bitch. I'm gonna get my certificate next week. I'm so happy, bro. Like, I don't know how proud I am for myself on this. I was supposed to announce this way later, but we're just gonna announce it now because why not? But oh my goodness. Okay, sorry. I gotta relax because we haven't even started up the whole video yet. But anywho, let's get straight into the recap. I might cut this into pieces because there's a little bit to remember, but I'm going to try my best to remember. So basically, he ended up kidnapping Tyler, and he was like, why did you do this to YN? She's, she doesn't deserve it, blah, 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 blah. Tyler was talking like crazy, and like, I date the hottest ladies in the world, blah, 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 blah. And then basically, he ended up dumping some wax on him, causing him to scream in pain, and basically turn him into a doll. Then later on, he turns his ex-friend Kelly into a doll because she was being rude with him, and blah, 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 blah. Then, basically, later on, Jason and her started hanging out more. Mr. Ewing, all of a sudden, just appears again. That bitch. And just starts basically begging her to sell the racehorse that she bought from him. And, well, she offered something about it earlier, I think, but he quote-unquote said his horse died or something like that. Oh, crap, I got my glasses. And, long story short, he was like, I will get that horse whether you like it or not. And something like that, almost like threatening her. Later on, she and Jason hangs out more. I believe Jason eventually got a new friend. Completely forgot her name. And then I think he turned her into a doll, or I'm not sure. But that's all I could really remember where we left off on. Except them hanging out more and, building that relationship. Last time, hold on, I almost forgot about the most spiciest thing of all. I think the last chapter we left off, they started, kissing and shit. And, well, you know where we're at. You know what I mean. You know what I mean. End of recap. Right then, to this, ladies and gents, and non-binary people. Y'all, so hopefully I don't mind the AC in the background, like sometimes usual. Anyways, we is in chapter 8, Fate. Your point of view. Almost 3 weeks have gone by and I haven't seen Jason at all. He hasn't been showing up to classes. Past disappearances have affected Jason greatly. I'm starting to get worried about him. I've texted him, but he says he's busy on a project. He says that he is sorry for not seeing me the past few days, and I believe him. But I need to know if he's alright or not. Jason doesn't want me to see him at his dorm, but he isn't leaving me any other choice. This RA at his dormitory will hopefully be there since it is Saturday. It was really quiet when I came through the doors. Basically a ghost town. I managed to find the RA until he led me to Jason's room and unlocked the door for me. It was strange because this was the only place in my mind that he would be at. There was something behind one of the many curtains on the walls. I thought it was Jason hiding. But when I saw a blue corner, I moved the curtain to the side, revealing a blue door. I felt like I should leave and come back some other time, but curiosity was in control now, and I opened it. All I could see was a hall. I went further, and while my mind was screaming at me to leave, the hall eventually ended, and the next thing I knew, I was in a workshop full of amazing toys. Dead people, but amazing toys. Jason, what have you been up to? I say to myself in shock and astonishment while looking around the room. I heard a squeak and looked over to see a black toy mouse by a circular window. I went over to it. It moved around freely as if it was alive. I gently ran my finger along its smooth back and laughed a little. Nah, that's impossible. You can't be alive. I chuckled. It looked me in the eyes. Not like a toy, like a living thing. My face faded away into a confused expression. Can you? I said quietly. The black toy mouse scurried away, leaving me by the window. I glanced at it for a second, but then I had to look again. I looked at every detail. It was a window looking into my room, through Stella. Jason, what are you hiding? I said to myself, now in fear. I stopped when one of my wheels bumped into a leg table. A doll fell from the table and landed on my lap. I gently picked it up and studied it. It was made of wax and was well detailed, almost lifelike. It had a flower over its mouth like the others. There was a name tag on them. I looked at the tag on the doll in my hand. Her name was Daisy. There was one thing that made Daisy different than the others on the table. She looked like she was once ruined and then fixed. I gently set her down on the table with the dozens of dolls and looked at the names. Nora, Hank, Sam, Wendy, Matthew, Jill, Miranda, Maggie, Kelly, Pat. I whispered. I only saw her once, but I still remember what she looked like. The doll in front of me was the exact image of her. I tried to think of an explanation before my eyes saw another name and I froze. Tyler. I whispered as I gently picked him up. He was wearing a tux and his hair was organized. He had a stem of a rose over his mouth. Why is he making dolls that look like missing people? I said under my breath as I touched the rose. I must have added too much pressure because the rose fell onto the floor. Crap. I whispered before I bent down to grab it while Tyler was on my lap, close to my ear. I hear a voice calling out in pain, making me stay still. It was familiar. Tyler? I said as I backed up. The voice faded as I did so. As I did so, I looked back down at the doll. I brought it closer to put the rose back on. The voice got louder. My hand started to shaking as I brought his chest to my ear. I could hear pounding, the sound of drums at the rhythm of a beating heart. I immediately put him on the table and frantically backed away. Oh my God, I said over and over as I looked for a way out. All the halls looked the same, so I decided to pick one and hope that it leads back to the blue door. I pushed my way through one of the halls, but then I immediately stopped when I saw a figure come out of the hall in front of me. Jason. Looks like curiosity really killed the cat here, didn't it? Jason's POV. I didn't want to believe Licorice. I didn't want to believe that YA got into my workshop. But she did. The look on her face said everything. She now knows what I am. She now knows what I do. The first thing I saw in her eyes was fear. I felt my insanity grow inside of me. You saw an awful lot, YN. Almost too much. I can't let you leave. I said as I felt my voice form and change completely. Wine started backing up as I slowly walked towards her like a stalking predator. She looked over at the dolls on the table. I knew she was thinking about me turning her into one. She would be beautiful, my best and most precious doll. I would keep her close to me and under my protection. I smiled. I'll make it quick and painless, YN. I promise. I said as she continued to keep her distance. Before I knew it, she grabbed an empty shelf and pulled it down, blocking my path. She turned around and fled. I smiled a little from the fun of a chase, but I gritted my teeth in anger from YN refusing to cooperate. Goodness. Your POV. I needed to get out, but this place was a maze. My arms were growing tired and I could hear Jason calmly walking in the distance. I reached the blue door, but my hopes of getting out faded. The door was now on top of a flight of stairs. I didn't want to do this, YN, but I really like you, but you saw too much. You don't want to cooperate, but that's okay. I promise that I will make it quick and painless. Jason's voice said calmly in the distance. He was getting closer. My mind was everywhere. My chair can't get up the steps. He'll find me if I try and drag my body up the steps. I looked around frantically before my eyes set on a wardrobe. It was my only chance. Wyan, I promise. Jason said as his footsteps grew closer. I pulled myself out of the chair and crawled towards it. I opened the doors and carefully just enough for me to get in. I closed the doors and looked through the narrow space. I saw him approach my wheelchair. His hands turned into fists from anger. Yet, he was laughing a little. You were very smart, Wyan. You had me for a moment. But there's no way that you made up those steps in such a short time. Even if you did, you wouldn't have gone far. I've played hide and seek many times. I know what to look for, he said as he looked towards the wardrobe. The two of us looked down at the floor to see a rug folded back from one of the doors. I felt so foolish when I saw the one mistake that was going to seal my fate. His shadow blocked the light coming through the space between the doors. I looked to see a sinister smile on his face before he quickly opened the doors. I tried to scream in fear, but Jason lunged forward and covered my mouth. You will be so beautiful, Wyan, he whispered in my ears as tears started to form in my eyes. Oh my lordy lord. Jason, I don't know how you get any bitches, but I don't think you do. For now. Chapter 9. Promise. Jason's POV. She didn't scream as I strapped her down. She didn't fight back. Her eyes watched my every move. She watched my hand draw what I wanted her dress to look like. I wanted her to have several outfits. A horse jumping uniform, a cowgirl dress and boots, and a fancy ball gown. There were so many beautiful outfits in my mind, making me smile. I looked over to see her face watching me draw. I finished the last drawing before getting up. I walked over and looked at Wyan's face. I didn't see any feeling of fear. What I saw in her eyes was almost heartbreaking. She felt betrayed. She had every right to feel that way. I did betray her. She lowered her head and looked away from me. Several tears fell from her face. I looked over at the melting wax and the drugs that will protect her from the pain. She took a deep, shaky breath before I looked back at her and tilted her chin up so that her eyes met mine. Her eyes were like glass. I moved her hair to the side before gently kissing her lips. Ugh. Her eyes closed before I did the same. I was going to miss her soft kiss. I was going to miss her laugh. I was going to miss her brilliant ideas. I heard the wax start to boil, and I gently moved my lips away from her, ending my last kiss with her. I walked over and grabbed my syringes. She looked at me as I carefully set the needle on her soft skin. I looked at her and sighed. You won't feel pain ever again. You will look beautiful. I won't let anyone hurt you. I promise, I said. She blinked and once more, and a tear rolled down her cheek. Oh goodness, this is sad. Jason? She whispered before I turned my focus back to the needle. It was in that moment that there was a knock on my dorm room door. It then occurred to me that it was the day that they were doing room checks. I sighed in slight irritation as I set the syringes down and walked away towards my dorm room door. Yeah. Your POV. This is my last chance to get out. If I fail, then it's the end. I waited a couple seconds after he disappeared from my view. I studied the straps on my wrist. They appeared to be old and worn. I should be able to break out of them pretty easily. The ones on my legs can be undone. I quickly started the straps on my wrist. I was free from the restraints before Jason opened the blue door to get into his dorm. I dragged myself towards my wheel tray in the corner and managed to get in it. I can't go the same way Jason went. There has to be another way out, I whispered. I went down another hall, hoping it'll lead to another door. There were shelves full of marvelous dolls. I wanted to look at them, but time isn't on my side. I went further and further down the hall until I reached an intersection with another hall. I looked left and saw the door that Jason walked through into his dorm. I realized that the blue door was the only way out. The doorknob started to turn. Jason is coming back. Excuse me, why did I need? Anyway. I carefully backed into the shadow of the wall and covered my mouth to silence my shaky breaths. That bastard, I don't need a refrigerator. I don't need more lights. He's about as arrogant as Tyler. Jason's voice said as he started to pass me. He turned into his monstrous form as he spoke, but then quickly faded back to normal. It took all the strength I had not to cry. I came out of the shadows when he walked further down the hall. I went straight for the door and looked back to see him entering the main room. He will soon see my absence. I quietly opened the door and entered his dorm room carefully before closing the door behind me. YN? His voice echoed in pure anger. I immediately left his room. I didn't stop moving until I was out of the dormitory and outside the courtyard of the Million building. I couldn't hold back any longer and I burst into tears. Jason and I were a team. We were close friends, but now I felt like we have just turned into what I feared most. Enemies. That would severely suck on my part. Chapter 10. Goodbye. Jason's POV. I spent a good 10 minutes releasing hell. I yelled, I screamed, I hit the walls of my workshop. I just couldn't get myself to calm down. You were going to be beautiful, YN. I growled as I grabbed an old chair and threw it against the wall. I promised that I would protect you, I said as I walked towards the broken chair. I promised that it wouldn't hurt. I promised. I screamed as I smashed the remaining pieces with my foot. I froze when I heard a door open, followed by someone crying. I recognized the voice and looked out of the window. Ryan got back to her apartment. I changed back to normal as I ran over to the window and watched her shadow come into her room. She had a bag and was packing clothes and essentials. When she was done packing the main stuff, she started grabbing pictures, trophies, ribbons, important documents, and other memories. All that was left in her room was furniture and lights. She stopped and looked at Stella. Her cryings faded into shaky breaths as she approached Stella. What are you doing, Ryan? I said as she started to move the hair aside. Your POV. I knew what I had to do to Stella. It broke my heart to see the smile on her face. I couldn't help but doubt my capability to do it. I thought you were more than a true friend, Jason. I liked you. I said it before I picked up the doll and carried it to the balcony before holding it over the edge. I'm hurt, Jason. I've been betrayed by friends before, but not like this, I said as I looked at the doll's eyes. I know I saw a lot. I'll admit that. But you want to turn me into a doll. The only thought in my mind is that I can't keep Stella. Because you might always be watching me, trying to find me. I have to break her, Jason. And then I have to leave the campus. I'm telling you all of this because I still care about you, I said while looking into Stella's eyes, hoping that Jason could hear me, hoping that he'd understand. Jason's POV. I could see the tears falling endlessly from her eyes. Why don't? Even if you do, I'll keep looking for you, I said, hoping that she wouldn't shatter the doll. I could see her shaking. Goodbye, Jason, she said with her trembling voice. No! I shouted as she closed her eyes, looked away. The doll was still in her hands. She gritted her teeth, trying to get herself to drop the doll. I was frozen, waiting for her to drop Stella onto the pavement below. I would. Wyatt opened her eyes and looked at the doll. She shook her head for a moment before bringing the doll close to her. I could hear her crying as she hugged Stella tightly. I can't do it, Jason. I can't. I love you. Shit. Oh my goodness, she said between her cries. I could hear her going back into her apartment and grabbing her bag. She looked past Stella's eyes as if she was looking at me. She then put the doll in a separate bag to blocking my vision. All that was left was the sound of her cries as she was leaving her apartment. You really love me? I said in shock. Not anymore. I turned away from the window and looked down at my rotting black hands. My anger was overflowing, but not at her. But at me. I turned completely as I yelled in anger and fell onto my knees before crying. It was my fault. My fear became real. Well, I'm glad it did because you sure deserved it, man. Anyways, chapter 11. Thunder. Your POV. My tears blurred my vision. I wanted to go home, but I couldn't risk Jason hurting the ones I loved. I wasn't sure if I should leave him. You aren't sure? He literally tried to turn us into a doll, girlfriend. I think you know your answer. I reached the stables to get the Dash. I don't have a truck or trailer, so I'll have to ride him. I was so confused when I heard a frustrated voice. No one would get a horse at this time at night. My heart started to panic when I saw Ewing trying to get Dash in the trailer. I had to stop him. I didn't care how tired my hands were from pushing up the hill. No! I screamed as I pushed the wheels as fast as I could, desperately to reach Mr. Ewing, to stop him from taking Dash away. He was the only thing I had left in my equestrian world. Seeing Dash refusing to get in the trailer was almost devastating. One of the wheels ran over a walk, sending me flying forward. It didn't stop me. I dragged myself towards the bastard. I ignored the pain from the gravel tearing onto my legs and hands. Mr. Ewing managed to get Dash into the trailer before looking at me with a sinister look. He started walking towards me, but I didn't stop. That is, until I saw what was in his pocket. I started to drag myself back until he grabbed my ankle. You are my favorite and will always my best. No one that still works for me ever made it past country. None of my horses can do it. My reputation has faded greatly because your loss of your legs. Dash is my only hope. I offered you money over and over. You refused every time, so you leave me no choice. He said before I punched his arm, making him let me go. I started making my way towards my wheel tray. I could hear Ewing laugh a little, followed by footsteps. He walked around me, but stopped when he was standing on my He was standing on my hands. I started screaming from the pain. Ewing bent down and grabbed my face, making me look into his eyes. I knew he could see my anger. You had seen too much, dear YN. I can't let you get to see this. I could kill you, but I like you, so I'll have to drag you with me. At least you'll be with Dash, he said as his face got closer to mine. My heart skipped a beat before I bit into his hand, making him get off my hands. I didn't know what to do. Dash needed me, but if I don't get away, I didn't even want to think about it. Ewing kicked my shoulder in anger, making me roll on my back. The air left my lungs for a moment. By the time I could breathe in, it was too late. Ewing wrapped his arm around my neck. He was trying to keep his grip while dragging me towards his truck. I could hear Dash calling out. He knew I was in trouble. His grasp was suffocating me. I scratched his face with my nails, making him move his face away, yelling in pain while holding his face. I gasped for air before his screams changed from pain into pure rage. He grabbed my neck, keeping me from breathing, my vision starting to slowly fade black. Ugh. You are just like Narcy. She was skilled. Not as skilled as you. I offered her a night with me. One night stand. She refused. So I fired her. But you, YN? I know from you is something I won't accept, he said before releasing me. One of his hands harshly pinned my wrist down above my head. He started working off the belt before his face changed from sinister pleasure to sudden shock. Blood flowed out of his mouth and his stomach as a jagged blade protruded out of his stomach. A black, decaying hand pushed him aside, revealing Jason. I looked at him as his eyes changed back to gold. Why are you hurt? He asked as a couple tears fell from his face. He rushed towards me and got down on his knees. I couldn't speak for a second. Why does everyone I couldn't even say anymore before I started crying. I heard Dash break his halter and get out of the trailer. I heard him trot over to my side. The only two things that mattered to me were here with me. I heard a sound louder than thunder hit my ears, followed by Jason's cry of pain. I screamed when I saw a black liquid coming out of Jason's chest. I looked and saw Ewing barely alive with a gun in his hand. He shot Jason. You cannot have her. Ewing said before his breathing faded and his eyes grew blank. My mind was in a panic. I grabbed my phone and was about to call for help. No! Jason yelled as he hit the phone out of my hands. Hey, Jason, you need help! I shouted back as I tried to hold back my cries. I reached for my phone, but Jason then grabbed my wrist. I'm not human, YN. You know that well enough. Do you know what they do to things like me? If you call for help, they'll take me away and we'll never see each other again, ever. He shouted in pure terror. That's what you deserve at this point. I shook my head. You can't die, Jason. There has to be something I can do. There has to be a way to save you. Yeah. I shouted between my breaths as my attempts at holding back my crying failed. I didn't want to lose him. Girl, it would be hard, but it wouldn't be impossible. Impossible. Chapter 12. Don't let go. Jason's POV. YN? I said before she interrupted. Don't talk, Jason. Save your energy. She said between sobs as she was adding pressure over the wound. I took a deep breath. YN, it was an act, I stated. YN paused and looked over at me. What? She stuttered between her now shaking breaths. I'm not in pain. I'm not gonna bleed out. I finished. She had a shocked look on her face for a moment. Then the next thing I knew, she hit my arm. I was shocked and absolutely confused. The act was to fool Ewing. I personally thought my acting was hilarious, but her face said otherwise. Don't do that to me, Jason. I thought you were going to die. She shouted as she started to hitting me with each word. She then stopped and looked into my eyes. Her eyes were overflowing with tears again. Her lip was trembling. Before I could say anything, YN wrapped her arms around me and started crying against my chest. I don't want you to die, Jason. I can't lose you. I can't. She finished as she continued to cry. I felt awful for hurting her. Yeah, you should. I wrapped my arms around her and swayed side to side. I let go of her once and she calmed down. I picked her up and set her down in her wheelchair. I led her and dashed to my domain through the stables. She was confused when she saw me holding my chest for a second. She followed me to my bedroom before I set her on my bed. Your POV. The bullet needs to come out before it scratches. What? Before it scratches it. What's going on, bro? Huh? He stated as he unbuttoned his vest. I was confused about what he was doing. Scratched what? I asked as he started on his shirt. I guess you could say it's my heart. Jason answered before revealing his chest and his form changed. I grew a little nervous because he normally turns into that when he's mad or irritated. He then took his claws and started digging into his chest. I couldn't bear to watch as he continued ripping his flesh. Every sound made me shiver. Are you okay? Jason asked as he stopped tearing at his flesh. I kept my eyes closed for a moment. I can handle gore images, but not the sounds. I can find it hard to watch you tear apart your body. I whispered as I reluctantly looked at him. He had a large hole in his chest and was holding his rib cage with one hand and the bullet with the other. It was just as graphic as Saw. Jeez. Jason looked away from me and focused on something glowing in his rib cage. He carefully reached in and pulled the object out. It was a blue music box. I admired it for a while as he checked for any scratches or broken pieces. He looked relieved when he saw no damage was done to the music box. I was confused when he held it out to me. I hesitantly took it from his hands and looked at it carefully resting in my hands. He watched calmly as I opened it. There are no words to describe the beauty I saw in that little blue box. You told me that when you find people, a true friend, that they don't let them go. They will stay by your side as long as you stay by theirs. I didn't know what the words were said to me by my true friend. You were always by my side. I shattered our friendship when I tried to turn you into a doll. Jason whispered before I looked into his pale green eyes. Why did you not want me to see your world. Why did you hide it from me? Darling, I think we're skimming over the fact that he's been killing children and people. I asked as I continued to hold the blue box in my hands. Jason was quiet for a while as he struggled for words, because I was scared of what you would do. I was scared that you would possibly hate me for all the children I met in the past. Excuse me. Like all the children I met in the past. I don't want you to hate me. I don't want to lose you. He looked quietly as tears fell down his face. I put the box in one hand and wiped away his tears with my other. I couldn't bear seeing him so sad like last time. And yet he could see us sobbing like crazy. I don't want to hear it. You won't, Jason. I promise. I replied as I carefully put the music box back in his chest. His eyes turned gold, and his body healed. Before I could button his shirt back up, the music box started to play. The tune was unique, but also enchanting. It was beautiful. Jason's POV. She started to sway back and forth a little as her eyes struggled to stay open. I smiled as her eyes started to close. I wrapped my arms around her and held her close to my chest before laying down on the bed. Don't let go, she whispered as her eyes completely closed. I won't, Wyan. I promise, I replied while bringing her closer. The music continued as she fell deeper into her slumber. After a while, the music started to make me tired. I slowly started drifting away. The music slowly came on to an end as my eyes shut and I fell asleep with my true friend and love, Wyan, in my arms. That is so cute, man. Aww, that's so cute. That is so cute, bro. That is fucking ridiculous. Oh my god. You know what? We can read one more chapter. I need to see what happens. I need to know, bro. I need to know. I'm not gonna lie to y'all. I'm kind of reading this like upside down, like while laying down. So let me see if I can read it like this, because it's a little different. I'm not gonna lie, it's a little different. Anyways, chapter 13, the beginning. In the beginning, the beginning. Jason's POV. Wyan has spent years struggling with her health. She has spent the last few months in the bed shivering from cold, yet sweating from heat. My Wyan had may be old and worn, but she is still beautiful. Oh. I could lay in bed by her side for centuries. Licorice turned into a lamp, making me wake up. Wyan slowly opened her eyes to meet mine. She smiled for a moment as I held her delicate hand. I got out of bed to get her medications along with a little bit of food. Hopefully she'll eat. I came back into the bedroom to see that Wyan didn't make a single move on the bed. I walked to her side and gently held her hand. It was like ice. I looked into her eyes as I fought back the tears stinging my eyes. Please, stay one more day, I begged as I ran my hand through her coarse gray hair as her eyes grew more and more pale. A weak smile formed on her frail face as she took another shallow breath. You said that yesterday, and the day before, and the day before that, she whispered as her grip on my hand faded. She had no strength left. There is nothing in the world that could fix my dear Wyan now. I love you. Don't ever forget that. She added. Oh my god, this is sad. I kissed her delicate lips one more time before her eyes grew blank and she took her last faint breath. Jason. I'm not gonna stutter that, sorry. She whispered before she grew still and her heart felt silent. For a moment, I couldn't believe she was gone. It didn't feel real, but it was. Why did she have to be an immortal human? She was everything to me. Death invaded me for the light I had, so he took her away from himself. He extinguished my source of light out of jealousy. I couldn't hold it back any longer. I was devastated, but also in a rage. I could feel myself change as I screamed and cried. I rested my head on the bed by her side as my eyes sealed shut from stinking tears. Suddenly, everything grew quiet. I wasn't crying. I couldn't feel a single tear on my face. I opened my eyes to find myself in bed. I then turned my head to see Wyan in a deep sleep. She wasn't old. She didn't pass. It was just a nightmare. The same horrid dream I've had night after night. Sorry, y'all. I had to get a little emotional to make it like more totally realistic. My eyes were just taking a shower a little bit, y'all. Don't mind me. Stop looking at me. Anyways, your POV. I woke up to the sound of Jason crying. His face was buried into my neck, and his arms were wrapped around me as he quietly cried. Jason? I said as I turned to face him. He slowly stopped crying and looked into my eyes. He tried to paint a smile on his tear-stained face before kissing my lips. But his smile faded rapidly as he buried his face into my neck once again and started to cry once more. I didn't know what to do. Jason, are you okay? You have been crying almost every morning. Is something wrong? I asked as I carefully brought his face back up to meet mine. It hurt to see him so sad. To see silver tears fall from his eyes of gold. He tried to speak, but instead he held me tighter and pulled me closer to him as he continued to cry. I was used to this routine. I'd wake up to sounds of Jason in distress and in need of comfort. He tries to tell me, but breaks down before he can even say a word. All I can and have done for the past few months is comfort him each morning, and I will continue to do so. Jason started to calm down as I kept my arms around him. His cries faded away to shaky breaths. Every night it's the same. Every night, he whispered as he tried to maintain control of his tears. Yet it feels so real every time. It looked real. It felt it's the same every time, and yet I fall for it every night. He finished as he rested the side of his head against my chest. What is it? Please tell me, I whispered as I held him close. I could feel his heartbeat started to slow down. I dream every night about you. More of a nightmare. You're old and ill, and at the end, you die. I'm not ready to say goodbye to you, and I just don't want to be alone, he explained. I could feel my heart in pain. Jason was my only friend and I was his. He has spent years in pure loneliness. He's afraid that when I die, loneliness will consume him again and he will never be free from it. I don't want to leave Jason behind in the darkness. I was quiet for a bit while I tried to think of a solution. I'm human. I'm not immortal, I stated before Jason's grip grew tighter. I would do anything for you to stay, he whispered. The pain in my heart continued to grow. I held him close to me. So would I, but time does not stop for a mortal. All I can do is make every moment I have with you count, I replied quietly. Jason's grip loosened and his breath was normal again. I wish there was something in the world that could keep me from death, but death comes for all mortal beings, and one day it will come for me whether I want it to or not. Jason's POV. Both of us were quiet for most of the day. We made short conversations while making toys and sculptures together. But that was it. I could hear her mind fighting with itself, trying to come up with a solution. It was very much like mine. I was on the edge of insanity. My voice in my head arguing with myself. It haunted me every day. The thoughts, the horrible images, and the questions I asked but can't seem to answer. What would I do without her by my side? How could I move on when I lose her? How could I stop death from hurting her? I would do anything for her to stay. I would give my heart to her so that she could live. I suddenly froze in the middle of painting. Wyan looked at me confused and worried. Jason? Her voice was soft but scared. I immediately stood up and ran out of the room. I could hear her going after me as I ran into my supply room and grabbed a wooden cube and some silver. The last thing I grabbed was a large book. I ran past Wyan and she turned around and followed me. I smiled a little. She may be 22, but she has the faith, trust, and curiosity of a child. That was one of the many things I loved about her. I sat down at my desk and set the things I carried down on the side. I could hear Wyan enter the room, and I opened the drawers and took out several bottles of the ingredients needed. I've only done this once, but it's worth it if it works. If. Ryan watched me as I took my knife and carved into the wood. I melted the silver and molded it. Some of it was lace designs. Ooh. And the rest were made to hinges. The pieces required for such a fascinating project. Ryan remained quiet as I continued to focus on my last hope of stopping time's effect on her. Perhaps, if Ryan wants me to, I can make one for Dash. I finished painting it before I added the silver lace, hinges, and the rest of the pieces. It was perfect. All that's left is the hard part. One wrong move and I have to start all over from the beginning. Ryan was confused, but she didn't dare ask me what I was doing. She simply continued to watch me measure and mix ingredients unknown to mankind. Eventually, it was finally done. I created a beautiful music box for YN, our last hope. I looked at the time and then at my splendid YN. It was way past midnight, and she was awake for the whole time, watching in amazement. I stood up and kneeled down in front of her. I gently held her hands and took in a deep breath. YN, I know you have so many questions. I know that you were scared. The music box I created just now, it's for you, I said before her eyes lit up. She covered the parts of her face to try and control her tears. You found a way? She asked as she maintained her control of her excitement. I smiled as I nodded my head, but my smile didn't last very long. If I don't do this right, I could kill her. The thing is, YN, I have to replace your heart with it. I've only made this once, and that was to my own self. I need you to sleep as I do this. I will use a shot to help with the pain. I need you to trust me. That is all I ask. I replied. I knew that she was a little nervous, but took a deep breath and nodded her head. I smiled and wrapped my arms around her as she did the same. I picked her up and carried her to a table. Everything will be all right, YN. I promise, I said before she smiled and fell asleep. She was at peace and had her full trust in me. I cannot screw this up. I will not. Your POV. I woke up to find myself in a dress Jason made in my wheelchair. I checked my chest but found no scars. I was like, Jason, it worked. I heard Jason's footsteps and looked to see him leaning against the door frame. He smiled and I smiled back before he walked up to me. I have something I need you to do, he stated. I was confused for a moment. I need you to stand up. I will help you, I promise, he said before holding his hands out in front of me. I was a little scared. I haven't stood up for several years, but I grabbed his hands anyway. I was shocked. There was no pain. I could stand up. I could walk. Jason smiled as I did the same. I was beyond happy. Now you can do more than just ride Dash bareback. You can compete again. You can return to the horse world and chase your dreams. You can do whatever you were meant to do, he replied, clearly beyond happy like me. I immediately laughed as I hugged him tightly. I felt him wrap his arms around me. He suddenly took a nervous breath before he let go. You made my life so much better, YN. You taught me many things. You helped me in more ways than you know. I've never felt this way before. I love you, YN. I've loved you for years. Humans always do this to someone they love dearly. There is a question I've wanted to ask you for a while now, he said as his nerves started to calm down. The next thing I knew, he was down. Oh my god, we're at 5%. We can do this. He was down on one knee. I have waited for this. What I was going to say. He smiled when I said yes and stood up before putting the ring on. He kissed me with as much passion as we had the night we were in the lobby, and I knew that this was the start of a new life, a new beginning with the one I loved. Aw, that is so adorable, sad, just mixing emotions, man. You made me tear up a little bit how beautiful that was. I'm not gonna lie. I'm gonna go ahead and take a small inch of a break to, unwater my eyeballs, because they need a very heavy towel, because they take a shower very harshly, Okay, y'all. So I had to put it on charger like mode. So this is like on my regular microphone. So if you don't hear me well, I apologize. I think this is the last part to this chapter. Man, that is surprising, but it is beautiful either way. Oh my goodness, I can't even like. Oh my goodness. And there is a couple of extra not necessarily chapters, but like notes of some stuff going on. So I'm gonna go ahead and read that for you guys. This first one mentions that they're gonna do some more Creepypasta X listener stories. So I don't know. I might get some from here. Wink, wink. Maybe. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see. And the next one is about just basically having some issues enough, but then they got fully requests. So there's nothing really much to the story. But honestly, I'm surprised we finished already all of this. This is nuts, but I loved it. It was a super simple, cute story. I wonder if they ended up doing the same heart little thing with Dash, because I really hope they did, because that would be awesome to have like a whole toy horse permanently for the rest of your life that you can ride forever and you have deep connections. I think that'd be so cool, but yet so risky. I don't know. Horses are kind of different. I don't know, but maybe it's a possibility. I'm glad that Mr. Ewing died, because honestly, that guy sucks. I really do hope you guys enjoyed this story. I'm surprised we're already ending stories on a flash. Like, this is freaking nuts, bro. We already finished the Tiki-Toby X listener story, and now we're already finished with this story. This is insane. Oh my gosh, I'm so excited to say even more new stories that you guys, I think, will definitely like. I'm so excited. You guys aren't you're gonna expect the unexpected. Oh my gosh, it's gonna be a lot of fun. But if you want to expect the expected, well, you guys can go check out my Wattpad account, because I have everything in the list, whether I like it or not. But y'all can check it out. It's okay, I don't care. I hope you guys enjoyed though. Like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for more amazing videos, guys. If you have any suggestions of what I should read next time, or the next time we go around again and again in circles, let me know in the comments down below, please. And if you could please consider giving me the link or a name of the author of the story, I would truly appreciate it. And if it was from Wattpad, AO3fanfiction.net, or some other platforms like Quora or some other ones, would be greatly appreciated. Some people have been requesting some particular Mikael X listener, which honestly, ooh, y'all are lucky, because I've been getting a little bit into that. No comment. Anyways, I gotta go for now, y'all. I hope we get to see ourselves in the next futurist story. I got to go. Bye and peace.